Good morning, everyone. Joining you today are Emily Reifsnyder and William Metzinger, this year's hosts of the Into the Darkroom podcast. On our show, we bring on a guest to discuss the arts and gain a new perspective on what it's like outside of the school curriculum. Joining us this morning is Marcia Lippman. Marcia is a photographer, teacher, storyteller, and a traveler, as well as a native New Yorker. Much of her work explores the passage and residues of time along with the ephemeral nature of memory. She taught for 13 years at the Parsons School of Design and is currently at the School of Visual Arts in NYC. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to start off by asking you about when you first began working as a photographer and artist. Was there anything in particular that drew you to working in this medium?
That drew me to work in this medium? You're a little garbled, so I didn't hear the question.
Oh, my bad. I was just wondering about what kind of led you to becoming a photographer and working in photography.
Okay. I started photography really kind of late. I was in my late 20s already. I was a very happy high school English teacher until I saw a picture in a magazine. Sounds so romantic, huh? I saw a picture in a magazine in a dentist's office, and I ripped it out, and it was not like what was in other magazines. It was just the torso, the bottom of a woman's torso in a vintage flower dress sitting on some mattress ticking, and it was just beautiful. So I this was in the 70s. I wrote this photographer a note and sent it to her care of the magazine, which was like sending it into a black hole, I guess. But lo and behold, like 2 months later, she called me to thank me for my note and told me that she was going to be teaching photography up in Maine that summer. She was starting some workshops with her boyfriend. And that was the first summer of the Maine Photographic Workshop in Rockport, Maine. And I went up there. Why did I go? I don't know. You listen. I have a good messenger service, and I have a lot of angels. So I was, as I said, I was a very happy English teacher, but also immersed in poetry of the time, and remember falling in love with a quote by Rimbaud that says, "1,000 dreams within me softly burn." And I always kind of tried to be open to one of these 1,000 dreams that is still quiet inside of me. So when she said, "Why don't you come up to Maine?" And I said, "Well, I'm not a photographer." And she said, "Well, maybe you are." And I said, "Well, maybe I am." So I went to Maine, fell in love with photography and photographers and the whole mindset, and everything just unfolded from that. I met people up there who introduced me to Christopher James and Jane Tuckerman, and I started traveling with Janie, and Christopher influenced my alternative process thinking, and I had met Craig and Kate Carter, and just a few years later, I left teaching English and went to India for a year to photograph intensely. I had no idea how I was going to make a living. I had no interest in that. I just needed to take pictures. So that was my beginning. And I very soon after that started teaching at Parsons. I was working in a gallery, but most of all, I was working on my own work, totally absorbed. So that was my start. It was totally accidental. And the rest of my life, I've always learned to listen for the angels, the people who nod or wink or affirm or confirm something, and follow your bliss. So that was my beginning. I'd love to ask you about yours, but maybe not now.
So What would you say your most important themes are that you're trying to communicate to your viewers?
Um, I saw that question. I'm not really sure what that means. I don't think I have any themes or stuff that I set out to communicate. I just, like I said, I follow my bliss. I think that the world very much needs people, wants people who are really alive. And I try to always focus, and with my students too, on what makes them come alive. And whatever that is, that's what I go and do and follow and get absorbed in. And when I follow one of those absorptions, what I end up with, I guess, is what is communicated, but it's never thought out like I'm going to do a project on India, or I'm going to do a project on this. I just let myself fully unfold into a project and see what I get. So that's how my portfolio is it's varied, because as I've grown and changed, I've followed different callings from India for a year to, I spent a year at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. I spent 2 or 3 years working at Auschwitz-Birkenau, all just following some inner call.
Do you find that there are any specific themes that you find yourself being called to more often than others?
Well, yeah, that follows right from that, Emily. You know, if in hindsight, when you look back at one's work, whether that's what you did last year or what you've done for the last 10 years, you start to kind of find patterns in it. And I have found in hindsight that all my work, whether it is Auschwitz or India or Argentina or the Greenwood Cemetery, all has deep ties to time and memory and absence and loss. There's a sense of longing that has shaped and authored all of my work. The search became the work. You know, maybe that requires a tiny bit of explanation, but I'm adopted. So I searched my entire life for my birth mother. That made me, in essence, a searcher. And I was going through places that I felt connected to, places that were full of stains and age and breaks and wear and time and of course, beauty. I'm a total slut for beauty. Just total slut. You give me a little piece of beauty, I'll follow you anywhere. So this sense of absence and loss and searching and longing became the well from which I drew. And I drew all my work from that. And, you know, that's a proponent part of my teaching in general, and in specific, one particular class that I taught for many years is, like what has authored your work? And I don't mean who told you to do a project on this. I mean, what authors, what's the well from which your work comes? Looking back now, I say, wow, I've been doing, no matter where I go, I've been doing the same stuff for 50 years, you know? Maybe it's time for something new. No, I mean, you can't. You have to just follow what it is that you're going to choose to give your time to, give your love to, give your absorption to. And it's only through absorption in whatever is in front of you, whatever you choose. I mean, absorption, what's absorption? total absorption, meditation, hopefully sex, hopefully somebody operating on your heart. I mean, that's absorption. You know, when you're in it, when you're part of that conversation, that absorption just it grows your work. So you have to kind of be in touch with what's in your center, what's authoring your work. And then, you know, when you get a little older, William, you can look back and you go, like all of us do, aha, so that's what I was doing. Don't you have that experience with your work all the time? You do something and then a year later, somebody will say, wow, that's all about sex and death. And you go, duh, of course it is. Oh,
I think that happens to me every 2 months.
Right. You know, and you have to be happy for that, because if you knew what the work was, then you'd have a destination, you'd have a path, you could plug it into your GPS, and you just lost the journey. You know, all you're doing is getting to the destination, and it's that journey. So, you know, it's really nice that you work in the dark. You know, what's the name of your podcast? Into the Dark Room, right? Okay, stay there. Stay there. It's a good place to be, right? It is. So, yes, you could go if disparate parts of my work were in front of you, William, or even if you glanced at the opening page of my website and saw the lead picture for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I think there are certain things that you would say to describe that immediately. And I think those things have to do with beauty and time and decay and ruins. So that's it. Very simple and very complex at the same time.
You mentioned a couple different bodies of work while you were speaking. While looking through them, we noticed you have several that are solely black and white while others are in color. Is there any specific reason you choose to do a body of work in color versus black and white?
Well, I only shot black and white film for 45 years, 50 years maybe. I've only been shooting color for the past 4 years. Maybe 5, who knows? We count the pandemic as, part of that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I shot black and white. I worked in film only. I did all my own developing and printing. But 4 or 5 years ago, I developed a lung condition and I can't print anymore. So I had to sell my studio, and I sold it to Eric and Stacy. So they live in my old studio. At that time, I couldn't even really lug cameras around. So I started shooting with my phone, just to shoot, because I'm a shooter. I mean, I take pictures. I'm a visual person. I take pictures all the time of flowers in my home, my shoes, whatever, I don't know. And then I played with them on one of those Photoshop apps. And I basically took 90% of the color out of them. If you'll notice, it's a very subdued palette. So they're basically, here's how I see them. They're black and white pictures that have flesh color in them. So the flesh is there. That's the only thing. I left the flesh in color. And that was very thrilling in the narrative of all my work to have gone from black and white. And when I let color in, I only let it in to show flesh. So, but you had asked one of your questions that 2 of my categories, Grace and Auschwitz, were so dissonant. And that was really interesting because, well, Auschwitz is Auschwitz, but Grace, that whole category, Emily, is all commercial work. So like you saw the difference, right?
Yeah.
You saw it in just looking, and that's why they're so different in content and message, because one was basically prescribed, fulfilling an assignment, and the others came from my center. So there is a difference. You know, it all comes from the same person. It just goes out a different door.
Yeah.
So running along the line of comparing color and contrast of color, another comparison is the message of the work. So another pair of projects that contrast largely in content and message are Grace and Auschwitz. How does the different emotional weight of each project affect your process?
As I said, the difference is in commercial work like Grace, you're working in cahoots with somebody. When I'm at Auschwitz, I'm just, I don't know. I mean, how do you go there and how do you make a picture of something that's not there? So it was really, that's why I went back so many times, because pictures seem so cliche. You show a gas chamber or barbed wire, and how could I show this in a way? And it turned out they were not. They ended up not being single pictures at all. It became an installation of small pictures that were adhered to a piece of decaying metal. So it became a collage of work, starting at the bottom with pictures of grass and ponds there, and rising up into smoke from a gas chamber. And I only made one of them. And the only place where the pictures are seen kind of individually is on my website. I don't sell the work, and I don't show the work. It was work I needed to do, wanted to do. So I did it. Yeah, it was a thrilling project, painful. What else do you want to know?
The presentation of your work. In your piece, Mother Myself, you use a lot of smaller frames.
Yeah.
How did that change your kind of like presentation and contemplation about the work versus showing it as just large prints?
Okay, well, the pictures in there, Emily, are all vernacular photographs. They're all family photographs or found photographs. They're either literally my family pictures of me as a child and my mother during that time, and all the rest of them are of young children, young girls, or women that I have collected in flea markets around the world for 30 or 40 years. Once again, kind of subconsciously searching for my mother, photographing, collecting photographs of women, almost like that old children's book, Are You My Mother? Said the chicken to the cow, or whatever. So I searched for my mother, and a curator at a art place in an art center in Frenchtown, New Jersey, called Art Yard, said to me, I'd love to give you a wall in this show on vernacular photographs, and it's yours to create any piece you want. So, like, imagine that as an artist. Here's a wall in a renowned place, create what you want. So it took me almost a year, and I found the photographs that I wanted to use to tell this story of my search for my mother. And I then had to go to flea markets and find frames that those pictures would fit in. So it was the actual materials, Emily, that dictated, and it ended up being a salon piece with an empty center, which was the metaphor of the empty center. And I had the art director there did a video of me that was shown with that. And, I've always kind of believed, Emily, that you have to articulate the world you want to live in. I had searched for my mother for 75 years. I did that piece, My Mother, Myself, and exactly 12 months later, I found my birth mother.
Oh, wow.
So obviously it was a piece, it was a piece for my birth mother, spiritually.
Yeah.
And so the size of the prints was the size of the prints. I didn't reshoot them. Yeah. That was a rather arduous show.
Mm-hmm.
As was my other very big show called That Which Is, which was also a collection of family photographs, my family's photographs, my images, and vernacular photographs, all talking about the subject of time and searching and continuum. That was my favorite show ever, artistically, emotionally, intellectually. That was the most comprehensive piece I've ever done. I love it. And not one picture, and they were also in groups of 3, but individually or a group of 3, not one picture sold from that show. And it was the best work I had ever done. So put that somewhere too, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask about, obviously that was a very personal work to you. Do you feel as if stuff like that, when you choose to create work about it, is a way of healing for you?
Absolutely. Maybe that was my therapy. I don't know. Yeah, I think it was, the pictures were kind of gestures of a journey that was taken very sacredly. And Rilke used to always say, I'm a photographer, but I'm always still an English teacher. Rilke used to always say that perhaps creating something is nothing but an act of profound remembrance. And so for me, my work is about remembrance. My mother's, I guess, spiritual existence, which lived within my search and is there in the pictures. Does that answer the question? I forgot the question halfway through.
Yeah, that was lovely.
So as a photography teacher for some time, can you tell us about the different institutions and some of your favorite classes you have taught?
Oh,
One
sure.
suggested that we speak about was The Secret Sits in the Middle.
You got it. Right after I came back from India, a dear friend who was sort of a colleague of mine, but he was really my teacher in many ways, taught me about teaching, even though I had taught English for 15 years. But now I was speaking a slightly different language, same message, different medium. And he decided to go off and sit on the top of some mountain with some guru. And so he left me his class at Parsons. He left me a thesis class. Mind you, I just been photographing for a couple of years, and I just came back from India and I don't know what I'm doing. So I taught there, and then I started teaching an alternative process class there, which was great fun. But then as the years went on, teaching, the school year interfered with my time schedule for photographing in Asia. I used to spend 3-4 months a year in Asia for about 15 years on work I call Sacred Encounters. And so I took off a couple of years. And when I came back, everything had changed there, and it was not friendly territory. So I went to SVA, and I've just taught at SVA for 20 years. Two, I think when I was at Parsons, that was the place to be. And when I was at SVA, that was the place to be. I'm not there now. I'm kind of glad. I can't imagine teaching what I teach on Zoom, but maybe I could. Maybe I can do it myself. That's a good idea. I'll do it myself. But about 12 years ago, I started a class called The Secret Sits in the Middle. And it comes from a couplet by Robert Frost, there's the English teacher again, that says, round and round in circles we go, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. So there was no explanation for this class. So I figured if you could read that and sign up for my class, you were in the right place. And nobody wrong ever showed up, really. All the right people showed up. And the class is basically about the secret that sits in your middle, your taproot, what you have to feel and fuel. It's a growing organism. So to try and find out what authors your work, how deep is your well, and starting to articulate things that are closer to you. And it wasn't all photography students. There were students from the fine arts department and illustration, because I don't care what medium you're in. Nobody ever talks about the machine. It's not your camera. You can take as good a picture with a Holga as you can with a Hasselblad if you have something to say. Right? So it's a whole class where we do a lot of fun stuff and explorative stuff on trying to find that center, trying to develop the instrument, who is the photographer. This is a medium of self-expression, which kind of means that there has to be a self to express. Hello. When art students say to me, can you give me some suggestions of some things to photograph? And I say, no. How would I know what you need to and if you don't need to photograph anything, if you need suggestion, I suggest you become an accountant. So, The Secret Sits in the Middle turned into this kind of, like a mini cult thing, like people would just have you taken the secret class, But I will say that I am still deeply connected to many of the students who I had in secret. I had students that used to take me as sophomores and juniors, and then in their senior year, they did the trifecta and did, The Secret Sits in the Middle. But then there are people who just waited. It was only for juniors and seniors. So it's it was always the most extraordinary class. And after I left SVA 2 years ago, I did it in a series of 3 salons here in my apartment. I had 10 people each time, and I did 3 sections of The Secret Sits in the Middle, one having to do with time, one having to do with the poetics of space, one having to do with the past as prologue, because all our work is about the past. Sorry, all your work is doing is giving the past a future. So that's been wonderful. And then I've been traumatized here with the pandemic. But I think, I think I'm going to try teaching that class online again. I think we all need that. I had that salon here, the last one, on March 1st. March 1st. And then I shut down literally on March 3rd.
Yeah.
And there were 10 women there, 10 incredibly dynamic women. And you think back, March 1st, we all could have gotten COVID. My God. So I'm going to try and pull together that group of 10 women again. But a couple of them wrote and they said, you know, a lot of the things we talked about have really saved me, because in a time like this, the answers aren't outside. You know, it's once again, round and round in circles you go, but the answers are right here in the middle if you can get quiet enough and alone enough to hear them. So that's my secret, sits in the middle class, and I love it.
How did your background as someone who taught English before becoming a photographer kind of influence how you teach?
That's interesting. How I teach. I think I was a much nicer English teacher. I was harder on my photography students because they were older. They had made a commitment, which was very often not very obvious. You know, I remember in the 80s when I was teaching at West Point at the same time that I was teaching photography, and I brought some cadets down to Parsons, and I brought some Parsons students up to West Point. And mind you, they're the same age, right? From the same cities, maybe even the same high schools, right? And one's at art school and one's at the United States Military Academy, right? And I remember these cadets being in my crit class, and two kids, they were kind of like real cool with each other, you know. Both groups, they sat next to each other. They weren't wearing their uniforms. They were wearing jeans, you know, so, but you could still tell who the art students were. And two of them had said that they didn't do the work. They didn't take the 2 rolls of film and 5 print assignment. And one of the cadets said to him, "Don't you want to be something?" You know, like from a peer, you know, like, where do you think you're going to get not doing your work? Don't you want to be something? Don't you want to be successful? And he wasn't saying it as if I said it to him, you know, the teacher, the old lady, you know, another kid said, don't you, you know, he said, the West Point kid said, "I do more before 9 a.m. than you do in 4 years," you know, so, and he's right. And the Parsons students learned a lot of discipline from them. And the West Point students, I think, learned to smoke pot. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm sure it was an equal exchange, but I'm not sure of what it was. But they were all very happy. So, yeah. But teaching English, I think that's where it was in literature that I had my escape. It's where I had poetry and beauty and romance and being able to be lost. And when it comes to photography, I think that all of us start out being lost. I mean, I don't know about if you can remember your first time that you took a picture and you made a print when you could still make prints, and you looked at it and you went, "Wow, that's really fucking good," right? Or, "I am so much better than I thought. I'm an artist," you know? I mean, we had those moments that you were just like, and you didn't have any idea what you were doing. Photography was like being out there riding on a horse without a saddle, right? And then school came along and started teaching you rules and regulations and lighting and this and that. And you learned a lot, but you lost the wild horse. So I really wanted people, maybe because my love of words and being able to get lost in books like that, I wanted them to make sure that they try to ride bareback again, that they tried to promise themselves to get thrown out of the nest a lot, right? And always be terrified, but move forward. You know, you can't forget to be unknowing and afraid, because I think that's, you know, that keeps your work spot on. So yeah, teaching English, I think, made me softer. And but as I said, I was more of a disciplinarian in photography, because I think that practice and hard work primes the well. And if you ain't doing it, you can't fool yourself. It takes years. There's no child prodigies. You know, you just got to work. So that's teaching. I love teaching. You know, I've had a fair degree of success with galleries and books and shows and museum projects, and opportunities like at Art Yard. I mean, really wonderful. But at the end of the day, I think teaching is my legacy. I mean, I would not be upset if people only talked about my teaching, right? But I do like my work, but it's okay. You know, it kept me busy, kept me off the streets. You know, you asked how do young photographers get into it? You know, how do you get into a gallery? I don't know. I never proactively showed my work. I didn't say I want to show that gallery, so I'm going to make, because I don't think things happen that way. I think in the big picture, you got to be in the conversation. If you're really absorbed in what you're doing, in this photography thing that you love, if you're really absorbed in it, then that affects a lot of your life. Where you go, who you want to hang with. You know, I mean, it's real unusual to do soft romantic pictures and then spend the rest of the week at acid rock concerts. I don't know. I mean, they're just so. I mean, if you're in the conversation, absorbed in the world that you've chosen to be in, I think things unfold. Someone will say, I'd like to show that work to such and such gallery, and they make the phone call, and then you get in. But I think you have to be in the conversation. You really have to be in your world. If photography, seeing, all of that, teaching, but photography, if it's not the center from which all things kind of spill. I mean, even the way I'll come home and I'll buy tulips, and I'll come home and I'll spend 45 minutes arranging them so I can take a picture, not for Vogue or even Instagram, but for me, because that's what I do. You know, I'm filling my hopper, so to speak. I keep filling. You have to just keep filling your hopper, and things happen. I think if you're in the conversation, things happen. People respond to you. If not, then, you know, like, once again, maybe you should become an accountant. I mean, if it's not what you're doing, then go with what you are doing. You know, I mean, what else are you doing? And if you're really doing something else 3 times as much, you know, I had a wonderful student who used to work for me also, and she was fabulous. And she was an incredible alternative process photographer, and she did really sensitive work. But all the time when she wasn't doing these things that I was pushing her to do, she was doing color food photography. You know what? Because that's really what she wanted to be doing. And now she is running her own kind of local provision food place in Pennsylvania. So she went from the passion to making the pictures to doing the business. And so she's got like a mini Fresh Direct, just of local produce. And this came to her through her photography. It's like, once again, I don't think you can think about a project you're going to do. You do it and see what you had. Like, be out there in this world and keep your eyes open, see what happens. I think we live in a responsive universe. And I think if you're putting out stuff, people are going to respond. And if you're not in the conversation, get more absorbed in the conversation or go start another conversation. If you had asked me at even the age of 30-something, would I be a photographer? I didn't even have a camera, Emily. Right? So, and that's, I think the pandemic has opened that up for a lot of people too, like, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. I mean, like, people have found new uncharted territory, I think, in their being during this time. And I think we have a lot more than one tool in our toolbox. And maybe it's another kind of photography or a different way of approaching photography, or maybe it's not photography, So I think you just have to keep your eyes open, your ears open, and, what do they say? I was in the right place at the right time, right? And ended up getting this show when something got canceled. Yeah, you were in the right place because you were where you needed to be. You weren't playing pool, you were with the people who were having that conversation about what you're interested in and what you want to, do. And it's not going to be easy. But Rilke again, back to the poets, he always said, let everything happen to you, the good, the bad, let everything happen. Just grow and grow and grow. Buddhist philosophy, no mud, no lotus, right? There's going to be mud. No mud, no lotus. So if you have a life goal that you want to be fully supporting yourself through photography and have a museum show and 2 galleries by the time you're 30, I would again say become an accountant, because that's not likely to happen. And you have to be in this because you love it, and there's nothing else you can do that makes you come alive, right? And then we may have to do some other things to fill the or to pay the bills, so to speak. Yeah, we have a very, very expensive habit here. It's more expensive than heroin. And you may have to do some of those things, but that's a means to an end. Why not? Why not? You got to crack the eggs to make the omelet, so what? But if this is what you want to do, just do it. Just do it. It will happen. Not everything will be okay, but a lot of things will be.
Well, that's a perfect segue into a question we had. So your work is currently being shown at is it the Nalia Alexander Gallery? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's how I say it. I think it's Nalia. She's Russian. I can never say it correctly. So I call her Nalia. So, that's okay.
Okay. So how would you recommend photographers who wish to show pieces in a gallery or other similar settings go about reaching out to galleries about showing their work?
But I don't think you can. I think you just have to be part of the conversation. How I got to Nelia, I had been with another gallery and I had left, and I wasn't with a gallery for 2 or 3 years. I wasn't really looking. I was just taking a breather, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And it's when I started doing some of these color pictures. And a friend from California was here with his wife, who's a good friend of mine, and they were here for dinner. And he walked down the hall to the bathroom, and he came back to the table, and he said, "Whose color stuff is that in your studio?" And I said, "It's mine." He said, "But you don't do color." And I said, "Well, yeah, I wouldn't if I didn't have to, but the black and white digital is still not good enough. It wasn't 4 years ago. I still don't love it, but the color's okay." So I said, "Do you like it?" And he said, "Yeah. Can you send me some JPEGs? I think my friend Nelia might be interested."
Mm-hmm.
So I sent the JPEGs. I met her a week later, and I had a show 6 months after that. I was having the conversation. I was talking with people. I had, not that all my friends are in photography. I'd say 90% of my friends are in the arts, but that leads to stuff too. I have a friend who's a dancer, and I ended up photographing dance for a couple of years because of that. Because she put me in touch with this art magazine that was called Dance Inc. No advertising, just photography. And, you're in the conversation. Well, certainly not now during a pandemic. There are no galleries. But I don't even know if galleries take submissions. Some do, I would imagine, but I imagine, quote, the top galleries. I mean, Gagosian is not looking at submissions. So with everything else, unfortunately, my dears, somebody can get you in the door. How your work holds up when you're in the door, that's on you. But you gotta get in the door. And the way to get in the door is to be in the conversation and be part of it. So that's the way you do it. I mean, I don't seek out people because they're in photography so that I can use them down the line, but you grow your life. Farmers are friendly with farmers because they share a lot. Artists are friendly with artists because we're all coming from the same place with similar needs. So get with the conversation.
Aside from teaching, would you say there's any particular exhibition or show or particular body of work that you're particularly fond of? If there are any pieces of work you've created that you're particularly fond of, but on the same line, are there any artists you usually draw inspiration from?
Because of my lung issues, I don't go to see a lot of shows or museums anymore. I mean, I used to go all the time, and now something really has to be compelling. It has to demand that either the presentation or the quality of the original art can't be seen online, so to speak. I don't know. I'm really very much into Anselm Kiefer. I mean, he's the artist one of the few artists that really rocks my boat. And I would go anywhere to see his work. There's too many to name, but he is just one person. His thinking and everything just really works for me. I think I'm probably more inspired by literature in my search for beauty. But I went to the Met on Saturday to see of course, I risked my life and went to the Met to see the show called About Time. Of course, I didn't go to see Tutankhamun or, the paintings. I went to see the show On Time, and it was, produced by the Costume Institute. And it was about clothing from the 1800s and the 1920s as seen by, Alexander McQueen. So it was, this time warp, which is kind of what my work is about. And all the dresses were black. And if you could see me, I'm wearing all black, and I have black glasses on, and I have silver hair. So, yeah, I once again, I go see what makes me say, I gotta go see that. And I don't think that falls into any category. I mean, last year I went and saw one show 3 times, and that was Dwayne Michael's show that he had at the Morgan Library. Did you see that?
No.
You know who Dwayne Michaels is?
Unfortunately.
The name.
Okay, you have an assignment, and I'm going to check up through your chairperson. You have to look up Dwayne Michaels, DuaneMichals. I don't know how you could have gotten this far without falling in love. So it's on you now, guys. But his show was great fun. And, there's so much painting that I love. I love the Impressionists. I love portrait painting. I got totally lost on the way out of About Time in the Oceana section, and oh my God, that was so fabulous. And then we went, it's just wonderful. It was so thrilling to be at a museum. So thrilling. I got really choked up. Let's hope I didn't get COVID and that I just got choked up. But it was very thrilling. I actually did not know if I'd ever be back in a museum again, and I was. And I'm not sure why I did that, but I did. So I would definitely advocate that. I hear that Mass Mocha, which is huge, that you can go there and not see another person while you're in there. That would be cool. The Met wasn't super crowded, but it was a little crowded. So what else do you want to know, you two?
Back to my original question about I know you mentioned earlier how if you were to be known for anything, you'd want to be known for your teaching, and that's what's most special to you. But do you have a specific body of work you've created that you're particularly fond of for any reason?
Oh, that's like asking a mother who's her favorite kid, right?
No, it's a hard question.
I love it all for different reasons. And when it was done, I couldn't do the India trip now. I mean, I did it when I was 35, when I was fit as a fiddle and young and exuberant. And, so that was the right project for them. I also couldn't do West Point now the way I did it then. I was one of the boys there. I would lift weights with them. So, I couldn't do that now. So I love all of that. I think, though, in terms of a body of work that grew into an installation as opposed to just a showing of photographs, which is what it always had been. I had big shows, but it was always, like 20 photos, I think in terms of taking total control, although it's not about the control, but taking the whole thing, and you have something to say, and it's being said in salon style or semi-salon style or in groupings and pre-framed, whether they're old frames or new. That started with That Which Is, which I showed up at KMR Arts in Washington Depot, Connecticut, and it was perfect. Her gallery is an old Victorian house, so it had a succession of rooms and space and a sense of home, and that was really, very powerful. And that was work mostly from Austria, Italy, and Argentina. So it was all pretty dark, pretty religious, pretty deep, a lot of blacks. I mean, it was just a really powerful show to me. And then to continue and do Mother Myself after that, also a salon piece. And I'm working on something now, which once again, and West Point was not individual pictures. That was a very prescribed showing of them. So maybe I could say that at this point, how I show something has very much to do with the message, the meaning, the gestalt of it all. I don't know. And if I wanted to do it in a book, I'd have to consider doing it differently. So I'd love to do that which is as a book, and I've tried, and it's not working as a book. So something else to figure out, something else to do. And sure as hell, we have plenty of time here, right?
Yeah. We do.
And I'm making individual, personal Christmas cards this year, and I make 75 of them. So if I don't get started soon, these are going to end up being New Year's cards or maybe inauguration cards. I don't know. But I'm not moving so fast these days. Work is much slower for me, much more cerebral than I'd like it to be. So whatever, it is what it is. You got to work with what's in front of you.
So our last question before we set you free for the rest of the day.
Thank God.
Is, what advice would you give a up-and-coming photography/videography student as we embark on our artistic journeys?
Enjoy yourselves. Follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. That's it. That's all I can say to you. I mean, there's no advice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, eyes wide open. I really do believe if you're doing what you love, you're there. The rest is whipped cream. How many people get to do what they love every day?
Not as many as there should be.
Right, very few. And we probably know them because they're probably in our world. But we're 1%ers. You know, for most people, work is what it says, work. You know, this is, yeah, I talk out of both sides. Yes, this is work, and it has to be, you have to work at it. But it's not work, you know, and we love to do it. So another reason those West Pointers got upset, I thought you love this stuff. You love this stuff. Why aren't you doing it all the time? You would stand outside for 5 hours with your friends doing hoops, right? To get better at it. You'd send, keep shooting, because you're going to get better at it. Do you think there's any difference? You know, if you stay with your work and you work on it all the time, like your mother used to say, go to your room. I say to you, go to your room, get to work. Work on this all the time. Be totally absorbed. It will get better. Have a better life, and your work will get better. You want to improve your work, improve the quality of your life. You improve the quality of your life, and I'm not talking moving into a bigger house. I'm talking about having a richer life. Your work will get better. So,
thank you.
Bad work, bad source. So go for it. Go do it. Have a wonderful turkey and a wonderful Thanksgiving, and don't spread any germs, and wear your masks and be safe and be happy. And I lied about everything I said. So so you can't print any of it. So bye, guys. Nice to meet you.